Vancouver's Eastside is one of the city's oldest neighbourhoods, which has high levels of drug use, prostitution, and homelessness. It would take police many years to realise that the disappearance of nearly 50 women in the area that spanned close to 20 years was due to a prolific serial killer that they had already let go at one stage. Okay, let's go. Now, before I go ahead with today's case, if you really want to find out all the details on Willie and his victims, I highly suggest Stevie Cameron's book called On the Farm. It is a huge read and over 25 hours on audiobook, but the detail into his life, you must read or listen. Robert William Willie Pickton was born 24th of October 1949, making him a bloody Scorpio.
The
24th.
The 24th of October. When?
1949. I don't know who else has a birthday on that day.
Drake.
Ew, really?
Yeah.
Really? Ew.
He was literally born on the same...
That's wild. I didn't know that. There you go. And now you share a birthday with old Willie. Willie Pickton, pig farmer.
I've shared the old Willie before, so why not?
Had a few Willies or two. His parents were Louise Helene Arnold and Leonard Francis Pickton, and they were pig farmers who resided in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada.
I like it. Port Coquitlam. I like that. It sounds like more of a indigenous, like original indigenous sort of name.
Yeah.
Coquitlam. You know, maybe some of the first inhabitants of the land.
Yeah, there you go. So that is actually 27 kilometres east of Vancouver. If you didn't know, now you know. His birth was described as rather difficult as he was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck.
Get out.
Yeah.
I was too.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh.
I came out purple. My face was so swollen.
So I might wait until you hit your 50s to make sure you don't turn into a...
If it was in me, it's already in me.
That's what I mean. People would later question if this may have caused some brain damage. I mean, serial killers and trauma.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Multiple... Okay, hold on. Sorry. That. Like, I came into this world trying to take myself out. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what happened. I also had another situation, though, when I was about 4 or 5, I remember it, where we had this... It was like an old church organ thing, but it was like an electric one. And it used to... It stood up on its... like, it was leaning against a wall in my sister's room, and it had these big, like, metal frame legs that used to, like, fold out. And I was mucking around with it because I wanted to play it. And I didn't really know how to move it, and I moved the bottom in too far, and the legs collapsed on my head and knocked me out.
So you've had some head trauma too?
Multiple times.
Oh, okay. You've heard that first, dear listeners.
To be fair, all it did was impact my ability to learn things. So we're good.
Are we sure?
I haven't killed any animals or people.
That we know of. Willie's childhood seems one out of some outlandish tale, and I'm not going to go into full detail because we would be here all day. So read the book or listen to it on audiobook if you want to dive into this guy. He had an older sister by the name of Linda Louise Wright and a younger brother by the name of David Francis Pickton.
David Francis Pickton.
David Francis Pickton.
I was imagining his first 2 names to start with an E because hers start with an L. So I was like, maybe he was going to be David Danny Pickton.
Yeah, right. I didn't even put that together.
And it's not...
Very observant.
Well, it's not correct anyway, so...
10 points to Slytherin. I nearly said Gryffindor, but
you nearly
no,
did.
that's
I would have
disgusting.
punched you square in the twat.
Yeah. Willie's mother was a rather odd woman. She was 16 years younger than her husband, Leonard, and later in life she would end up losing most of her teeth due to not taking care of them. Oh, just you wait, sunshine. And even lost most of her hair, which she would cover with a kerchief. Which I was like, what the fork is a kerchief?
It's a handkerchief.
Yeah, but it's a bandana or a hanky. I'd never heard of it because it's always like
Kerchief,
a
that's the
handkerchief.
old school way that they would say it, though.
Yeah,
kerchief,
like handkerchief, not kerchief. I was like, what the... Blah, blah.
It's like catsup and ketchup. Ketchup literally is...
Catsup.
Like the rename of catsup.
That's, yeah, right. And apparently her chin hair had so many hairs that it resembled a goatee.
Okay, hold on. She's got no teeth. She's got no hair. The hair that she should have had on her head has migrated to her chin.
Yeah, local kids would never forget what she looked like or how she spoke, some saying she had a loud, shrill voice, and her dress sense would be that of men's gumboots and always wearing a cotton dress over men's jeans. Like, you do you.
No,
boo-boo.
what a mess.
What a mess. Like, that's what I said, you just wait.
And wait, that was his mum?
That was his mum.
He must have been a real looker.
Yeah.
If your mum is bald, you don't stand a chance.
And has more hair on her chin than you do. Leonard was also one not to worry about appearance and was said to always wear a dirty shirt over dirty blue jeans and black rubber boots and a hat. Willie would be described as having a rat face, just like his father. You might be thinking, oh Ashley, that is a bit harsh, but just you wait, my little mung beans. If you haven't heard of Willie Pickton before, you were in for a wild ride. The family farm would later move to Dominion Road, Port Coquitlam, although it wasn't so much a farm but more of a dirt patch full of animals, old cars, and a rather distinct smell. But it was one of the largest properties in the area. Animals would walk through the house and manure would be everywhere because no one really cleaned it up. Apparently the smell didn't even bother Louise. So not only did Willie's parents sound a little unconventional, Willie would later on in life tell stories of living in a chicken coop as a young child and saying that to get fresh water he would lift up the floorboards to drink from a stream under the house. Unfortunately, the kids were not really taken care of, if that picture is not already being painted.
The woman's got more hair on her chin than Arafat. I don't know what you expect. She's not in her bonnet, Potter.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of apt. Look, I'm sorry, but they look like rats and they live in what kind of resembles a sewer now. So,
yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja
Turtles. The children were made to work on the farm and would clean up the pens of up to 200 pigs before and after school, and even took care of the 8 cows the family owned. So, of course, the children would stink, and I mean, they did only bath once a week as well.
Once a week?
Once a week.
Well, I mean, okay, but listen, if they live in chicken coops and they're drinking water from a stream under the house, at least they're bathing.
Yeah. Leonard and the kids would gain the nickname Piggy.
But they looked like rats. I kind of feel like it's a little bit misplaced. It could have been Ratatouille. They probably never would have heard that before.
It was said, however, that the daughter seemed to be adopted in the sense that she wanted a different life and was clean and didn't want to look after the farm. Louise would ensure Linda went to Sunday school and had nicer clothes and ensured she played with other kids. Obviously, the boys were treated a bit more differently with no Sunday school, but instead they would take care of the pigs and run wild in the woods.
I mean, some of that sounds kind of sick, I'm not going to lie.
Run free!
Run free, piggies!
Literally. Willie was rather close to his mum. She was a bit more protective of him as he had a bit of a harder time than the other 2 kids. He was shy and bullied a fair bit. School records would show that Willie would have a bit of difficulty and would need to repeat some early grades. This, however, could also take into account not being raised like regular kids at all. Other kids would also make comments on how Dave and Willie would speak. Dave was known to talk fast and high and was not able to pronounce his R's, and some would say he sounded like Elmer Fudd, especially when he was worked up. Willie, on the other hand, was withdrawn and would rarely talk, but when he did, it was described as gabbling in a high, fast voice. Willie later in life would be known to tell a lot of rather sad stories from when he was a kid, and one instance really stood out to him. When he was about 12 years old, he went to a livestock yard with his parents. He had saved up some money to buy a cute 3-week-old black and white calf. Willie would later describe it as really pretty as the day is long. It was a nice calf, and I was going to keep the calf for the rest of my life. He would be excited to come home from school to feed it and look after it. However, one day he came home and he couldn't find the calf. He would state, "I went everywhere looking for this here calf and I couldn't find it anywhere. They say, oh, it must have got out. I said, how can it get out the door? The door is locked." A family member who is thought to be his father suggested he go look in the barn. Willie stated, "And here I seen the calf hanging upside down there. They butchered my calf on me. Oh boy, I was mad. I couldn't talk to anybody for 3 or 4 days. I locked everybody out of my mind and I didn't want to talk to anybody. Louise would try and make him happy by giving him some money for the calf, but he would still be upset.
Yeah, I would have punched the bitch.
Yeah, like you give
My
this
calf,
boy...
that's my pet. I will never take his side. I don't know what he's done, but if he's the subject, then I know it's something not good. The child in me that would like how I would feel. I know it's a cow, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what kind of animal it is. That's your baby. That's your pet. I have 2 snakes. I would die for those things. So it's like, I understand as a child that would look through those eyes, how that would feel.
Willie would later state, "That really upset me, but that happens. That's life. I mean, we're only here for so long. When your time is over, your time is over." By grade 8, Linda would leave the farm and go to live with relatives in Vancouver. She was known as the smarter one in the family and was more than happy to leave. After leaving, she rarely saw her family. She was like, bye.
But same.
Yeah.
I don't think she was adopted. I think she was the only one born with brain cells.
Yeah, I think so too. Later on, the family would expand their business by buying several large commercial freezers, and by 1965, they would register a business in Louise's name as B&C Frosted Foods. She also registered the farm as a business, calling it B&C Frosted Food Bank, and a few years later changed the name to B&C Lockers. Another property would be purchased to hold about 100 frozen food lockers, where customers and other farmers could store their meat. Customers would call this place the meat locker. By now the farm had grown rather substantial, holding about 700 pigs and hundreds of chickens, with several sheds and barns on the property, and the animals pretty much having free roam to any part of the farm or farmhouse. Both boys would work really hard on the farm and would even come home during lunch breaks to take care of the animals. By the age of 14, Willie would drop out of high school, with his parents not really minding, as it meant they would have more help on the farm. His mother wanted him to learn how to slaughter the pigs. He would unwillingly go watch the local butcher who worked on the farm attend to the pigs, and later Willie would agree to start an apprenticeship as a meat cutter. So that's going to end real well.
Because that's not going to come in handy later, is it?
His brother Dave would stay in school and even date girls, unlike Willie. He would, however, get in more trouble than Willie, with one major incident happening when he was 16. He got his driver's license, and one evening on October 17th, 1967, he took his father's truck for a drive. By 7:30 p.m, he was headed home when he would come across 14-year-old Tim Barrett. Although it is not fully known what happened that night to cause the accident, what we do know is Tim was hit from behind. Dave stopped long enough to look at the body laying on the road and then fled home in a panic. He grabbed his parents, who noticed there was a dent on the front of the vehicle, some blood and paint that had come off where Tim had made contact with the car. Leonard told Dave to take the car to the garage to bang out the dent and paint it. Louise went to find the body, and she rolled him into a ditch where he would later be found by his family and friends after they found a shoe on the side of the road.
Nuke all of them.
Every single one of them.
Nuke them.
Nuke them all. So Dave took the car to the garage. The mechanic thought it was odd, but would end up fixing the dent. He did say he was not going to paint the truck, as something didn't feel right, as the car was already banged up, and usually the Picktons didn't care about this kind of thing. The mechanic would hear the next morning that a kid had been killed in a hit and run. Obviously, he contacted the police and they would seize the truck. A coroner's report would show some rather shocking news. Tim had actually not died from the hit and run, and instead had died due to drowning from the dirt water in the ditch.
He wasn't even dead. The mum killed him by rolling him into the ditch.
Yep, literally the water was like, yeah, thin as. David would be charged for failing to remain at the scene of an accident.
Good.
And convicted on December 19th, 1967 in juvenile court. He was placed on probation and his licence was suspended until he turned 21. Obviously, police didn't know about Louise's role until later in life. By 1970, Willie was working on his apprenticeship as a butcher, and Dave was working in demolition and selling topsoil while still helping at the farm. Willie was even doing the butchering of the pigs and cow by this time. The family would also board horses on the farm, with Willie showing much interest in helping with them, and even decided to try out buying one for himself. He bred a mare that was on the farm that would later give him a Palomino colt that he called Goldie.
You like Palominos?
Yeah, I love Palominos. Oh, you remembered.
I remembered.
It was his pride and joy, although people would mention they never saw him ride the horse. Around the time he got Goldie, he would also quit his meat apprenticeship, even though he'd only had 6 months left before being qualified.
Oh, what happens? What do you say? What do you do?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Goldie would injure its leg badly, and Willie had to put it down when it was only 4 years old.
It went lame.
Yeah. Having been so attached to the horse, he decided to saw off its head and have a taxidermist preserve it. You can find photos of it online, as he would eventually mount it in his house. 1978, Leonard would pass away from cancer, and the farm would lose 600 pigs due to a fire breaking out in the piggery barns. By 1979, Louise also died from cancer at 67. After the death of both parents, the farm went straight to the kids. It was in Louise's will, however, that would change Willie's life and make you question, would everything have happened the way it did if it wasn't for the will? Willie felt he was free. However, his mother's will stated that there were certain controls on his inheritance that did not apply to Dave or Linda. Willie did receive a lump sum of $20,000, as the farm was now worth a lot. The family made a lot of money by selling off plots of land to realtors and so on. He would not, however, receive any more money from the estate unless he stayed on the farm until he was 40 years old. This meant he was now stuck on the farm for another 10 years and had to go to his brother and sister for money. Leonard had a different will, however, because he died first, Louise's was the will that stuck. Willie would receive the rest of the $88,517, which was to remain in a trust controlled by David and Linda. Obviously, this annoyed Willie as he was close to his mother, and towards the end, he was the one taking care of her, from bathing her and changing her diapers. So I'm pretty sure Leonard's will was like just split even, kids get everything, whereas she had these controls on Willie. By the 1980s, Willie was working on cars and trucks, fixing and pulling them apart and selling parts and scrap. He would continue the meat business by attending auctions depending on what his customers wanted. Anything from chickens, rabbits, emu, cattle, and pigs. He was also known to purchase piglets that had sores, and often he had animals put aside that people knew they wouldn't be able to sell. Willie would take the animals home, slaughter, butcher, and package the meat himself for sale.
Well, yeah, because you're getting that livestock cheaper. But then you're also possibly selling inferior meats.
His favourite method was slitting their throat by a knife. However, if it was too big, he would shoot it in the head with a nail gun. Once the animal was dead, he would cut into its ankle, put a hook through it, and hoist the animal up feet first by a chain. Sometimes he would do this while the animal was still alive and then slit its throat to let it bleed out. After taking what he needed, he would dismember the animal using a handsaw. To get rid of the bones and what he no longer needed, he would use his brother's bulldozer to dig huge holes around the property to dump the bones, skin and meat before filling in the dirt. Willie wasn't the best butcher, even though he had a fair bit of training, so he would sometimes get local butchers to take the more significant pieces of meat to cut them into finer steak pieces for him. Now, if you haven't heard of Willie Pickton, you may be thinking, why am I going into detail about him being a butcher? Well, unfortunately, you will find out more than you would like to, but hey, this is a true crime podcast, and if you're liking what is going on in your ear holes, you should go to our Linktree and like and subscribe and do all the things.
Like and subscribe.
Follow our channels, because we're on YouTube. Dave was starting to pull away from the farm life and dive into his demolition business. And he was obsessed and wanted to become a part of the Hells Angels, who were a big presence in the community at the time.
Get a life.
Your face. 10 years, get a life.
Get a life.
There were stories of the brothers becoming involved with the Hells Angels by using their property as a chop shop or a place for stolen vehicles to get broken down and sold. The Picktons would dig the holes to bury the cars or even dump a load of dirt over the top. The police would investigate the brothers, however, it would soon drop off once a serial killer was found to be on the loose by the name of Clifford Olson, who was murdering children and teenagers in the area that lasted 18 months and was known as the country's worst serial killer, which that name does not ring a bell for me at all.
No, neither.
So maybe we'll have to add that to the list, or you can let us know what you'd like by suggesting a case.
Boom.
There you go. Many people would visit the farm, bikers, families and friends. They would hold barbecues and parties, and a lot of the women around the time would always comment on how weird Willie was. They felt he was strange and just had a weird vibe about him.
Oh. He looked like a rat.
Yeah, didn't shower.
Didn't shower, so he stunk. He spoke funny.
One person even made note that whenever they held barbecues at the farm, Willie would never cook up one of his pigs. He would always have some excuse like, oh, the pigs are sick, and people were starting to hear rumours that the brothers were making snuff films. So a few guests would even mention they'd never eat the meat that came from those freezers. I don't think I could eat any meat that came from a man who did not wash.
Well, there's that. But then also these people would know, they would be privy to the fact that he also buys like less than ideal animals to cut up for meat. So even if it is pig or emu or cow or lamb, whatever it is, it's probably still not going to be good to eat. And I don't know how long it's been sitting in the freezer for. And they stink and they're dirty. So
No.
I wouldn't either.
Willie would soon go on to start cruising the downtown east side of Vancouver, a place he would constantly visit due to a rendering plant called West Coast Reduction, which was pretty close from there. He was so well known at the plant that he would just be waved in and free to dump whatever he had at the time without having his containers inspected.
Smart.
He would roll the barrels to the end of the vehicle and would pour the contents into a huge pool of just who even knows what. Sometimes he would even have someone from the rendering plant come out to the farm and pick up drums. One driver noticed what he thought was weird. The contents of one of the drums had some chunks of meat in them. This was odd, as most butchers would try and use whatever meat they could.
All of it, yeah.
No one, however, would bring this up, and they would continue to let Willie dump leftovers, as well as have it taken away without any questions. Once he had made a run to the rendering plant, he would drive around downtown and eye off the women there. He had learnt a lot about the prostitutes down there, as the bikers would bring back women, and I guess you could say he was now getting curious, as besides a few pen pals over the years, Willie had never dated anyone or even been with the woman. A lot of women would end up murdered or would go missing from the downtown area. It was not uncommon, given the time, for police to not really take much notice or care when it came to these women, as they were seen only as prostitutes and drug users and not real people. I mean, you couldn't even be gay back then, let alone sell your body. But I guess I can't really compare, because some people don't even like you being gay now. Or selling your body now.
Imagine if you're gay and you're selling your body.
That's just a double no-no. The women took it upon themselves to make note of any strange occurrences, report when a man would try to do them harm, take down number plates, and even share a sheet of people they should not do business with, which I thought so smart.
I think so.
The police weren't looking out for them, so they were looking out for each other.
You kind of had to back then too, though.
A woman by the name of Lisa Yelds would befriend Willie Pickton in the late 1980s, and they would even form a friendship of sorts. She would visit the farm a lot and go and hang out in Willie's trailer that he was now living in on the farm. She was also one of the only people who could get Willie to have a bath by telling him he stunk or that he needed to change his clothes. They would even talk on the phone for hours, although it was a friendship that was never sexual.
Good, because it was dirty.
Willie was always generous with her, and he would provide meat for her and her kids and would sometimes go shopping for groceries together. By 1993, Lisa would work with Willie cleaning his trailer and even help cutting meat in the slaughterhouse. They formed a rather strong connection, and it was later in life that she realised Willie had given her a bunch of hot dogs for free when she was a young girl and had visited his family's meat locker. So she kind of had that moment of like, oh, you were that little guy. Willie and his brother Dave would venture out into more illegal activity, hosting cockfights and selling booze and cigarettes, which would later help shape a new business idea for the Picktons.
Entrepreneurs.
Oh, yes.
You got the manure part, right?
By 1995, Dave came up with the idea to start a bar, which he named Piggy's Palace Good Times Society, and it could sit at least 150 people. Oh, and to avoid certain regulations, they registered the business as a non-profit.
Of course.
Willie was excited about the new business as well. Although he didn't drink or do drugs, he found the new venture as a possibility of him getting a girlfriend. He even went out and brought new clothing for the opening, as well as a toupee to cover his bald spot. That didn't last long, as he never washed his own hair, let alone knew that a toupee needed to be looked after. So people are saying he was wearing it for a while and it was just like ratty. And
It would have looked like just a matted pile of bird's nest on the top of his head.
yeah. You see what I mean earlier when I've spoken to you about this case being so large? I've actually even left out so much information already, but I really wanted to paint the picture of who Willie was and what his life was like. This case is one that just does not seem real to me. So now we're going to dive into some incidents and other things that occurred that really make you go WTF. Another thing to mention around this time, the Green River Killer was active at the same time as Willie Pickton.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's actually quite interesting. On March 22nd, 1997, a 31-year-old woman who had hit the streets to make some money. Around 10 or 11 p.m. that night, a red pickup truck would stop and roll down its window. It was Willie Pickton. He asked her how much for a blowjob. Could you imagine? No amount of money.
Well, right, he's Canadian too, right? So he probably has his foreskin and he's not really cleaning. So that is going to be sour cream central.
No, thank you. Sandy answered $40. Willie would ask for a bit more and asked if she would like to go to his place.
Go on.
At first she was iffy, given Willie's house being a bit further away. He then offered $100 and would bring her back by 1 a.m. She hopped in the truck. They chatted for a while as they made their way to Willie's farm. As they headed closer, she asked Willie to stop so that she could go to the bathroom. He was hesitant and told her that his place wasn't much further. They entered his trailer, and the first thing she noticed was how messy it was. When they entered his bedroom, she noticed that he didn't even have a bed, just a sleeping bag. He handed her the $100 note and they both undressed. They had sex for about 5 minutes, got up, put their clothes back on. Again, she asked to use the bathroom. Once she went in, she shot up instead. Well, tried to, as she missed the vein and was unable to get high. She came out of the bathroom and asked to use his phone book, because remember those things back in the day?
Yeah.
Her back was to Willie as she flicked through looking for her boyfriend's number. As she was doing this, she felt Willie standing very closely behind her. She turned around and he grabbed her hand and started caressing it. Then all of a sudden, he slipped a pair of handcuffs over her wrist before she could stop him. As she was screaming, she started punching him and Willie started punching her back. She remembers seeing a knife in the kitchen, so she started heading towards there, all the while she was trying to fight back and keep him off her. She found the knife and clutched it and started swinging it at him, slashing his throat and cheek. She started grabbing anything she could to throw at him. She was able to break free and started running out whilst holding the knife. She smashed a window open of a nearby house when she noticed a pair of headlights coming towards her. Although she was afraid it may be Willie, she was happy to see an older couple. She yelled for help and the couple stopped. They saw a woman holding a knife, looking terrified and with cuts on herself. As they put her in the car, she was sure to point out to the couple where Willie lived if anything happened to her. The couple called emergency services, and it wouldn't take long before a police car and ambulance pulled up behind them. They even told the police where the man was and that he was also injured. At the hospital, Sandy was examined and it was found that her hand was badly cut and they thought her lung had been punctured and she had 2 deep stab wounds in the abdomen. Although they thought she might not have made it, she was taken into surgery. Not long after Sandy arrived at the hospital, staff noticed that another stab victim had come in and he was also rushed into the emergency room.
No, pull the plug. Pull the plug.
You know how I said earlier that Sandra had one handcuff attached to her wrist? Yeah, they found the key in Willie's pocket, and it just so happened to unlock the one on Sandy's wrist. Because if you didn't put 2 and 2 together, that was Willie that came in to the hospital. Now, that sounds awesome, right? Maybe a slam dunk of, hey, some kind of altercation. What is this guy doing?
Nah, she's a prosy. They don't care.
The police did get a search warrant for Willie's property, and stories went around and even news reports published, but they didn't name Willie. Willie would be like some crazy drug addict hooker attacked me. His story was that she was the attacker. They went for sex for $200, and when they arrived at his amazing trailer, she saw more money and decided to threaten him with a knife / try to steal from him. Because you know, bitches be crazy. On April 8th, 1997, Willie was charged with 1 account of attempted murder and with unlawful confinement and aggravated assault. Willie, because he did have money, hired a very well-known and costly criminal lawyer by the name of Peter Ritchie. A private detective was also hired, and unfortunately due to fear, Sandy did not show up to court, and all charges were dropped.
Court, you have to turn up. I get when you can't though, like I get it,
But exactly what you said before, the old she's a drug addict, hooker, who cares? So I know we've been here for a while, but this is where I'm going to leave you for part 1. Yes, this is a 2-part episode. It has been a while. Sorry, not sorry, dear mung beans. This case is just too wild and I haven't even scraped the surface yet. So yeah. And that, dear mung beans, is the beginning of the horrific Willie Pickton case, the pig farmer who was upset that he didn't hit the big 50.
Yeah, right.
So-
Nothing's really happened yet, and I'm already I'm ready for it,
Yeah.
but I'm also annoyed at it.
I've prepared you by giving you a lot of info that will be coming in later.
Well, look, it's not going to be until after Japan. I would have forgotten all of this by then. So,
And then you get to come back and I get to say konnichiwa, baka.
yeah, hi.
Stupid. That's what it's like. Hey, stupid.
Yeah, baka, damare.
Joey's going to Japan. Goodbye.
See ya. Sayonara. Not sayonara, that means I'll never see you again. The one that means I'll see you soon. I'm off to You're the one that has to edit it, so
Yeah,
you
it's
make as many noises as you like, girl.
You do what you want.
Done. Okay.
Done. Done. His
penis.
His
A rat face. Do you know, all I can think of now is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The mic. The mama. Ah! Big hand.